Good afternoon, collectors and friends. Welcome to Trading Card Therapy, episode number 86. I'm the doctor, your host, Leighton Sheldon. We have a great episode planned for today. Stay tuned for our guest, Derek Grady of Heritage Auctions, longtime and very good friend of mine. Super pumped to have him on. Before we do, I wanted to say to Mr. Euchre and his family, may he rest in peace. Certainly he's going to be missed. He was beloved in the baseball world and beyond that. I'm certainly going to miss him. I'm sure many others who are listening or watching this are going to feel the same. So the next thing I wanted to mention very quickly is I got a really cool piece from my collection. So hint, hint, Derek, if you have something there that you picked up recently for your collection, love for you to show it off in a few. So I am a big Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant fan. And in particular, I collect photography. Definitely not crazy about tickets the way that my friend Darren Ravel is. That being said, I was in the market for I guess it's backwards in terms of the way it's showing, but nonetheless, it is a 1996 Lakers versus Bulls. That's a rookie year Kobe Bryant ticket. It is indeed the first time that Kobe Bryant ever faced off against Michael Jordan in the NBA. It had me reminiscing about this trio of very early Kobe Bryant photos. They're like snapshot photos that I bought out of an auction. So here's the first one. It is of Kobe on the McDonald's All-American team signing autographs. So that's number one. The second one is of him doing a reverse slam. And the third one is of him in just a kind of like a generic McDonald's uniform, almost like warming up before the game. This, of course, was taking place during the McDonald's All-American Game festivities. And, the Michael Jordan memorabilia from his game in the early 80s from the McDonald's All-American Game is very popular. The Kobe stuff is very, very difficult. So I bought these three photos together. I don't remember the exact price I paid for them, but I've only sold 2 photos in my entire life. And I've been collecting photographs for about 20 years. So I'm curious, gang, if you're watching this on YouTube, let me know in the comments, which photo of these 3 would you sell off? Would you sell off this one, the one in the McDonald's warm-up? This one you got to keep, right? It's the reverse slam. So I feel like the one you might sell is either the one of him signing autographs, but I do like the way that there's like tons of little kids around. And keep in mind, this is only 1996. So he definitely didn't have the career, people didn't know he was going to have the career that he did. So he's already beloved back then. And I really do like this. So it's a tough choice. I'm going to ask Derek in just a minute or two. And just because to complete the go around here. So this is a Michael Jordan photo. It's kind of tough to see, but I'll zoom out here for a minute. And this is the kind of stuff that I collect. So we're now going to bring on Derek Grady of Heritage Auctions. Hey, Derek, buddy. How are you?
Good, man. How you doing?
Good. Happy New Year, bud.
Happy New Year. It's good to be seen.
Yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time, and I'm glad that you're, excited to join us today.
Hey, you know what? Always happy to be on your show.
It's funny. I feel like I know you so well, so we could joke here. So, like, who's the we here? It's like I feel like I'm on the Seinfeld set, right? Remember when Kramer does like the Andy Griffin show? He's got like pots and pans, and in his own mind, it's like this show. So I don't actually know how many people listen or watch, but I do know, Derek, we have a target. So we did a recent episode of the Vintage Spotlight with my friend Jeremy Lee. Who runs Sports Cards Live. He does it every Saturday night. And I generally appear on there for like a few minutes with a segment called the Vintage Spotlight. And we recently interviewed this gentleman, Matty C., who's a big collector of Mickey Mantle.
I've seen him post on Instagram. That's who that is. Okay. Yeah,
so that's who that is. And we actually had him on a full episode of the Vintage Spotlight, which we do every 2 or 3 weeks. And that was our last episode. We have a new one coming out. And that episode had about 4,000 views in the last 30 days.
Hey, it just takes time to build it up. And if you have good content and you got some characters on like me, the Great American Collectible Show, I think we have, 42 viewers. But when I'm on it goes up to like 4,000 too. So.
Oh, I have no doubt. Listen, that's why I'm super pumped about this episode. And what's nice is because we're taping, if anything kind of gets like off the rails a little bit, we can edit if necessary.
You never know with me, man. Right.
I know.
But honestly, I'm candid. I'm not going to pull any punches. I'm free. I'm a free speech guy, as you know. So,
absolutely.
Like
I said, first off, really grateful that you took the time to join me today because I know you're super busy. working
That's
on
okay.
behalf of Heritage. But putting that aside, I kind of
Yeah.
want to give people an insight into who you are, Derek, and just very quickly, if you could tell people about your hobby journey, like how'd you get involved, maybe touch upon, your professional experience. So that way folks have a little bit better idea who you are,
How far do you want
and
me to
your journey.
start back?
Well, it's really up to you, man. Hey, listen, I sometimes tell people I remember hitting the ball out of Sheldon Stadium, which is, of course, what I named my parents' backyard,
Yeah.
when I was in third grade with a Fisher Price bat. I mean, I remember the
Okay.
whole thing pretty vivid. So you could take it as far back as you'd like.
I collected cards. It basically all started when my best friend in high school said, "Hey, do you want to sell your baseball cards? Did you collect cards when you were a kid?" And I said, "Yeah." "Do you want to sell them?" Not really, no." "Well, where are they?" "Well, they're in my bedroom somewhere." And he offered to take me to this coin shop that on a Saturday they had at the other side of the coin shop was baseball cards. And when that door opened on Saturday, an oasis opened for me. And I was 14 and I could not comprehend all the vintage cards they had. And I could buy a Willie Stargell card, Roberto Clemente rookie, I've never seen one before, Pete Rose rookie, I've never seen one before, all that kind of stuff. And I was just like, so, if I just take a step back into like 1980 and 79 football, 1980 baseball, when I was buying cards with, packs, you'd have that little Beckett price guide, right? And it was a little square thing. It wasn't the big book, right? And I would be like, hee, I'm getting rich as I go through looking up the values of the cards, even though I'm not selling them. I'm adding up, oh, this is $1.25 and that's $3, and Ricky Henderson rookie is whatever. So, I always thought cards were cool, but then you start noticing girls in high school. So I was like, it's like ninth grade, and I had stopped collecting cards, and my friend mentioned about, do I want to sell them? And then he took me there and the rest changed. So then when I'm like 15, 16, 17, I'm working in card stores. By the time I'm 18, I open a card store. I'm direct with not a BS card store. I had direct with Upper Deck, direct with Classic, direct with Fleer, I believe. Tops may know, but I was hooked up with wholesalers. So I had a retail store while I was going to college, and I was doing trade shows. Then to speed up the story, I had met Joe Merkel, who started SGC, out on the trade show circuit, and I did some work with him. And when he opened SGC, he called me and said, "Hey, you have a good eye. You want to come out here and try to be a grader?" And within 2 years, I was the head grader. And then I had worked then I went to Master Auctions, and I went back to SGC for a few years, and then Heritage wanted to change the way we handle vintage cards and build the catalogs, and so they brought me in on the team, and we've been just busy as can be ever since. Just super pumped at the auctions we put out, the quality, the catalog, what we did at the National with that, the $63 million auction with the called shot jersey, and some of the highlights, the 9.5 Mantle that sold for $12.6 million. That was probably the highlight, where I got the card raw, submitted it, got it graded. That was killer.
So I'm going to stop you right there, because to
Yeah.
me, and I have literally a very long list of questions, so I'm not going to get to all of them, but that was one of them. Listen, I've known you a long time, but I got to imagine that one of the few times you stopped in your tracks was when you saw that raw 52 Topps Mantle ungraded. And so if we could, I'd like to share that experience with the audience, because for me,
question.
I personally would love to just know, what was it like to be you? I know
I'll
you
put you
pretty
right
well.
in there. I'll put you right in there, because this is an interesting one. And I'm going to tell you, because the reason I'm saying it's a great question, it seems simple, but my answer is going to really put you how I was and the way my thought process worked, because this was not a consigner. If you talk to some people in our business, they'll say they couldn't believe I closed it, because the consigner is not somebody that needs money, and he has been down the road with other people before trying to sell it, and he wouldn't do a deal with anybody. So when I go into his memorabilia room, I see this card in a card saver in a screw down. So it's not in the screw down being pressed. It's just in a card saver in the screw down, right?
Sure. But nonetheless, I just kind of tightened up a little bit.
So I'm like, I look at it, but I don't pay a ton of attention to it, because as you know, no matter what a card looks like, the grading companies can do whatever they want. Okay. So I am not saying anything other than it looks rose and fine to me. It looks great. There could be a wrinkle on it. It could be, I mean, I have no idea. I'm not going to give my full opinion until I can have it in my hands. As you know, as a grader, I need the card in my hands. People ask me all the time, you've got some of the best eyes in the industry. You know, can you just tell me what this is going to grade? And you know, Leighton, as you've got great eyes yourself, until you have it in your hands, okay, a card can have a pressed out something. There could be an alteration. There could be a crease on the back. You really need it in your hands to examine it before you can tell somebody, right? So I don't have a signed agreement. So the last thing I want to do is tell them, Anthony's his name, obviously was public. Just talked to him yesterday to catch up. So I was excited because I thought what it could be. I was like, wow, this looks like a mint Rosenfind example, and I'm really don't want to even say much until I have a signed agreement. So the first day we talked about what we'll do as heritage. Okay. And if it grades this, if it doesn't grade this, you're going to get it back because you're not going to want to sell it. Okay. Until we worked out the terms, okay, I did not even really. And then once I undid it, and Lee's with me, by the way. So we're handing this thing over.
Shout out to our buddy Lee.
Yeah. Hey, Lee. He's on the road right now. I think he has a flat tire. He's on a consignment pickup right now in Connecticut. And I just got a text from him that he blew out a tire. So Lee, as we're live right now, Lee is sitting on the road waiting for AAA to come give him a tire, or tow him, to a new tire place. Lee is like, he hands it to, you know how carefully you hand this card. I literally take it out of the room to get better light. And I look at it and I was like, this is a no-brainer 9. No-brainer 9.
That's awesome.
And we know what what the 10s look like. There's a 10 that's superior, that's incredible. It's Jim, that's Marshall's, right?
Yeah.
Other ones back at the standard is different, right? So, and this card's amazing. Okay. If it was graded back in the day, it would have graded a 10. And then it was just from there, I was blown away. I couldn't believe it. I knew this was going to 9. And then it was just a matter of who do I use for it? And I chose SGC. That's where it went. And you have to be careful. What people don't understand is you have to be careful. If you send it to a grading company and say that grading company doesn't get it right the first time, or they just say, they change their mind, you have to disclose if somebody asks you, what did this other company grade it? So I only had one chance with this card. Okay, if people said, why didn't you send it here? And then you use, this company versus this company. That's
Derek, you bring up an excellent point, and I want to make sure I clarify for folks that are maybe listening to this a little bit later. So in a nutshell, what you're saying is not only was the grade, of course, super important, but the process was almost as important, if not more important.
It was
because a lot of folks, in almost like in rushing to the finish line, to the goal line, if you will, they would be like, listen, I want the contract. It's going to grade 10. Who cares? I just want. Oh, if it doesn't grade with PSA, we'll do SGC. If it doesn't grade with SGC. But kudos to you, Derek, and the Heritage team for understanding that this was far more nuanced. Even though it's an unnumbered card, meaning it's not serial numbered, it still didn't matter. It was so high profile. Yes. As you said, people had known about this in the hobby. The people in the know had known about this card.
Knew he had it. People tried to do deals with him and they couldn't. And he trusted me. And I said, thank you so much for trusting me. You're also trusting Heritage. Okay. And you should, because this is why I'm here and not somewhere else. I believe in what we do. But there was I basically say we ran the flea flicker, because it was not only get the deal signed, it was make the right choice. And it's not saying that, say PSA 9s it, there's no issue. But if they don't put a 9 on it and then I am run out of time and I go to SGC, then if it was an 8 or an 8.5 and then SGC 9s it, I got to tell people, if they ask, that's full disclosure. You have to be full disclosure in the auction business. There's nothing to hide. There's nothing wrong with grading. Companies see things differently, as we know. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay, I could grade a card. I was the director of grading plenty of times. Maybe Leighton, you reviewed cards with me when you submitted, or other people. I try and be unbiased, show it to the other senior graders. If I graded it, let them decide. I can even raise my own cards or lower my own cards that I've seen, because you get a fresh look the next day. Okay, but on this, you really have one chance to grade it one time. and SGC and PSA didn't have a 9.5 either. I knew they weren't going to 10 it, but they didn't
Great
have a
point.
9.5. SGC had the 9.5, so I wanted that, you know, the 9.5, and that's what it came back. I think it looked wonderful. It was something I didn't experience before, because when we had it out at a show, anytime I went near the case where that card was in its own case, right? If you remember it at the National,
I do remember.
every time I went near it, a line would form, like almost like they waited, because I was the guy. Because what was great, Leighton, and what I loved about this was it didn't matter what race, what gender, what age. The line of people from 8 years old to 80 years old,
That's cool.
from every different country. Okay, it was amazing how many people wanted a picture with this card. And I held it with them. I'd get the Coke out of their hands, get the bag out of their hands. I'm like, listen, if I'm doing this, and God love him, Ivy was like, dude, like, I know this is great for the customer, but at the same time, we've got liability here. And I'm like, I'm going to try and hold a piece of that, hold onto the holder too, because so many people wanted that moment, because I was doing interviews. It was on TV, on lots of TV shows. And I just wanted to see the excitement, because you and I are longtime hobbyists. And the one thing during an awful time in our history with the pandemic, the one bright spot was our hobby gave so many people joy, right? And I loved watching people smile, from grandmas to 8-year-olds, holding this card, saying they were with the famous Mickey Mantle card. So it was really cool to experience that. And and to be honest, I still always check in on trade, the local trade shows, and to hear how good they're doing. And I love to hear when a store pops up, because you remember when there were stores everywhere, and then they disappeared, right? Then they all disappeared, and the shows were dull. You remember the White Plains show when it was booming, and you remember the White Plains show when it was like, how are they going to restore this to anything? It's
and like
terrible.
the local deli closed. There was no business there. We couldn't eat lunch. It was terrible.
Yes. Awful. And now look where it is. Now a new person bought it, because Jimmy and Brian built it up so good to where sold out, and now Lucky Promotions bought it, and they're going to do a great job with it. But it's so cool. And that's, but anyway, the way that card was handled from start to finish, okay, was you had to handle it the right way, because if it didn't get a 9, I had to give the card back to the consigner, okay, because he wasn't selling it as an 8. He believed the card was, he looked at the other cards in his mind, right? He looked at them and he was like, this thing should be a 10. And I was like, okay, standards have changed a little bit. Let's lower the expectations. I don't need to lower the expectation. It's my card. So it needed to be a 9 at least. But there was
Derek,
no
I give you a ton of credit for understanding that, because listen, even though I might be on the different side of the business in terms of, you're handling consignments, and Mantles and Wagners for Heritage, whereas I still might be handling Mantles and different kind of Wagners for Just Collect. Nonetheless, we have this common theme that we know with collectors, that everyone thinks their cards are a little bit better than they often will actually grade out. And so, kudos to you for understanding and saying, hey, listen, the card's a dead nuts 9. We've all used that terminology, but yet you saw kind of the forest through the trees and said, you know what? The chance of us getting the PSA 10 is like so minuscule, even though it might actually earn the grade. It's still so minuscule that what's nice is the SGC brand not only had the half grade, but I give you tons of credit for this also. Until that moment, I don't know that the half grade between the 9 and the 10 for SGC had ever become so prevalent and important until the 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle was graded SGC 9.5. And in a way, I kind of feel like that opened up. Like, I didn't know that either.
I did not know that either, Leighton. But
I think it did.
It did make the difference. If that, put it this way, I've told Foreman this, because him and Scott are the head graders that decided to pull the trigger on that card. If that grade's a 9, what does it go for? It gets compared to the 6 other 9s. It doesn't even get compared to a 10. Okay. And there's 3 SGC 9s. It gets compared to the other SGC 9s and the PSA 9s. It doesn't get compared to the 10s. Because it was graded a 9.5, it instantly vaulted the 9s, and people at the show, with us not saying anything, were comparing it to the PSA 10 that was on display. So everybody compared the 9.5 to the 10. Nobody was comparing it to a 9. So it turned out to be profound. I mean, it couldn't have went better. That's what I'm saying. It was like the perfect, Maybe it was like, I'm not an Eagles fan, but maybe it was like that Eagles play in the Super Bowl, whatever they call it, the Philly, whatever, and I'm not an Eagles fan, but it was executed perfectly and they won a Super Bowl and they'll never forget it. Right. And this was executed from start to finish. And I didn't know, I put a lot of thought into it. And Leighton, you obviously do the same buying deals. There's lots of dealers that buy deals. You have so many repeat customers, and the way you buy deals, there's an art to it, because in our business it's been bastardized where people just think, ooh, I'm just going to put buying baseball cards. Okay, I'm going to put signs on, I'm going to run an ad, and I can buy baseball cards, right? Everybody does it.
And they actually just fall from the sky, Derek. You and I wake up, we don't even actually have to do anything. Well, like when you're going to the kitchen for breakfast or for your coffee, like, oh, I just got hit in the head by a mantle.
Just like when people open stores. When I was 18, going to college with an upper deck license, and I was the second store in Greater Johnstown, Pennsylvania. By the time I sold out, I think there were like 20 stores, and that included stores in, a couple showcases in a hardware store, a couple showcases in a movie rental place, a couple, in a sporting goods, everybody that knew anything about cards was like, I'm a dealer. I'm going to set up at shows. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. They're engineers, but they're a dealer on the side. And, just like buying cards, when you talk to people, and I can see you going in as a professional that's been doing this for so many years, and somebody tells you, well, this guy that's a friend of my aunt told me that this card is worth this, and this card is worth that, and this is this, and this is this. And it's like, and we have to cut through that, because I face it all the time. You face it all the time. And we've both obviously been successful at what we do, but we don't have that doctorate or the lawyer or the whatever certification behind us, right? We have our expertise in this industry, but there's no degree for it, So
it's true. But I think our degree, if you will, speaks for itself through experience. And look what you did for the Mantle, and I'm sure countless other consigners, but obviously, the Mantle got a ton of PR, and rightfully so.
Yeah. Now that was the highlight. That was definitely the highlight, because you can Google it. If somebody doesn't, obviously I'm single, and, if I'm dating and somebody's like, well, how do I, you meet people online, obviously, just Google, that's the thing that comes up when they Google me. They're like, what is this in a Mickey Mantle? I didn't own it. No, I'm not a gazillion. That wasn't my card. It's like, I probably should lie. I'm not a good liar, but that was mine. Yeah, I have it.
Well, listen, we should go out together, right? I'll tell them I'm Vince Vaughn's brother. You could say you own the Mantle. Yes. We're going to have a great time. Well, we've had plenty of great times. I did want to bring up something that I think could be of value to someone who might be even just listening to this. You've been not only the head grader at SGC, you've handled some of the most iconic cards in the world across a variety of different platforms, meaning auction houses, etc.
Graded them for major clients, which was,
and they didn't maybe even sell them. That's what I'm saying. People don't realize the extent of your experience. So something that you brought up, and I want to try to boil it down to a couple key points for someone who might be listening, is let's try to make sense for a minute, if we can, of vintage grading and what folks should do. And maybe I wrote down this term believe, because you and I have been there, where, in other words, you keep grading a card a few different times with SGC or PSA, and yet you still believe in a grade. And I know that sometimes I've been guilty of waiting too long, i.e. years, but I've also seen standards change just ever so slightly, or one grader maybe now confers with another grader because they have no choice, right? Because they're at the national, hint, and you show them in person, and you get someone's ear of consequence. Yeah. And so the point is, at least from my perspective, I wanted to bring up a little bit of the journey that you can share with folks that you're comfortable with, that you might maybe not realize is so obvious. In other words, kind of like what you were saying about the Mantle, but kind of dumbing it down in the sense of like, hey, if you're going to go out and buy $1,000 vintage card or a $5,000 vintage card, which is a lot of money for almost all of us, ourselves included, what is maybe a tip or two that you can offer if the card's already slabbed? Because a lot of folks, I feel, Derek, they get disappointed later because they buy the slab, they think it's graded, and they're like, yeah, but I have an 8. I'm like, but did you not see the centering, like left to right? And they're like, but the person who was selling it to me didn't mention to me. I'm like, they probably didn't, because you were looking at the card, you said yes to the price, it's graded. And so in a nutshell, can you try to explain to folks a little bit about how the beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and this whole notion where this low grade, high eye appeal is just having some tremendous momentum in the space right now? And so I'm going to, take a breather here and let you share maybe a couple tips for folks that are listening about vintage grading and what they should do when they're either buying raw or they're buying graded cards.
Yeah, I mean, what you just said there towards the end was these low grade, tremendous eye appeal cards. And am I mistaken or am I not that the person we talked about earlier, the Matty C guy, is he not been showing on Instagram different cards? Is he the one that does that?
That's what he does. Yeah.
Oh my God. I mean, he is showing 3s that look better than 7s. Now, again, they're going to have what I'll call a critical flaw, because for a 1 to look better than an 8, that means there could be writing on the back. There could be a pinhole through it that you can't see. But at the end of the day, when you're displaying a card, you're displaying the front of it, right? Unless it's a rare back, you're displaying the front. And if you can live with the front of a card and you can display it and save yourself a ton of money. Also, he compares the old grading standards versus the new grading standards to where, here's a PSA 6 on a 52 Mantle, and here's a PSA 4 that's dead centered and looks better than the 6. The first thing anybody can see, okay, is centering, especially on a 52 Mantle. I feel like people can see centering now more than ever. Centering's become so much more important. In the 80s, when I was buying, what mattered most was corners and pack fresh appearance. Okay. So the cards I bought, graded near mint to mint by every major dealer, did not take into account centering unless it was like 90-10 or 80-20. Okay. Because they were pack fresh out of packs. So when I still have believe it or not, I have a ton of cards when I was building my 55, 54, 56, some football sets. I have a ton of ungraded cards, and there's 8s in there. And there's also cards I bought as 9s or 8s that, because of centering, are going to be 5s. Okay. So I'm too annoyed to unpack boxes to go find them, because I know that I didn't put away a dead centered because I tried to buy pack fresh. And somewhere along the line that changed. And now it should have always been eye appeal, but centering now, even though they publish standards, 2-to-1 can still be an 8. Well, try and get an 8 now that's only 2-to-1. You're probably not going to get it, right? Or 60-40 on a 9. Well, there's cards that are 60-40 that look way worse than that, okay? Or look way better than it measures, and they don't put a 9 on it. I feel like the standards have really, really tightened up, which makes it hard because you have then a collection, as you've seen when you go in to buy a collection. Not all 8s are created equal. Okay. I don't care if you're looking at a Gaudy. The pre-war is where the standards change probably the most. Okay. Because those were the cards that
like
were
33 Gaudis.
Oh,
you know what like 8s look like of 10 or 12 years ago? Oh my goodness, of course.
Yeah. And now you can't get an 8. Now I can have a 9 and not get an 8.
It wouldn't matter. Oh my God. Wait, so I have a great question to interrupt here. So with all the different changes evolving over time, let's say you're someone who is new and they're coming into this space, and Derek, they make a very good living and we want them to be here for a long time as a customer. So whether it be they found Heritage, they found Just Collect, or they found eBay or anything in between, what do we advise folks who are just coming into the space about the older graded cards that maybe don't look the grade versus a newer graded card, which, to be clear, just because it has that new hollow whatever doesn't mean it's a dead nuts 9. You have to still look at the card, folks. I just want to make sure I caution you and say that. But that being said, what do you advise clients in terms of discerning the difference between the different eras of grading?
Well, the first thing I truly believe, and I've seen this more in the coin industry, and I think we mirror the coin industry. We're just behind them. We're slower. Okay, to regulation. We're slower to FBI investigations. We're slower to everything. But it happens to us 10 years later after it happens, right? Even the certifying cards, in coins at CAC that they put stickers on cards, right?
Oh, sure. NBA here.
Yes, NBA is doing it, right? And I think that helps. But the one thing I noticed a long time ago in coins, and Lee's dad was a coin dealer, our friendly and my colleague. There are clients that everybody thinks they can do baseball cards on their own because it's easy. They collected them as a kid. You go to the store. Who am I? Who are you? You look like a regular guy that you sit there and watch a game with and have a beer and eat a piece of pizza with. You don't, doctors are wearing this white coat and they look like they get this ultimate respect. But here's the key. There are a lot of rich coin guys or average coin guys have a coin dealer they trust. I think people do too much on their own in this industry. Come in, they think they can do it because they run a multi-million-dollar business or they're very successful at what they do. So why can't I figure out this? I want to call it almost like an arrogance. I am telling you tomorrow that if I decide to start buying art at any level, I'm going to find an art guy I can trust and bounce things off of him. I think more people need to find somebody, okay? If you're just getting into anything, find somebody you can trust as an advisor, okay? Because other than that, everybody makes a mistake, and it's the Wild West. They use the wrong authentication company for bats or jerseys. I collect game worn.
Oh my
right?
God, I know. Autographs.
Yeah.
KSA versus this.
Yes. And so if you go with an advisor, find somebody you trust. It doesn't have to be me or you. Find somebody you're comfortable with, because when you try and figure it out on your own, okay, I don't try and figure out art on my own. If I started collecting coins tomorrow, I'd find a dealer to advise me. Okay. And the percentage it would cost me would save so much money in the long run. But people don't do that. And Leighton, I'm telling you, that's what you do to learn and get better. You don't always have to use that person, but when you first start out. But I would always say, if you still want to do it on your own, buy the card within the grade within the, don't just look at it and say, oh, this is an 8, I'm going to buy it no matter what. Because then you will over time be disappointed that you bought something that may be a 6 today, and you're going to be like, I can't live with this, and you're going to end up replacing it. So, or the other thing, buy based on eye appeal, and you can't go wrong. If you're happy with a 3, you're going to save a ton of money, and you got your dead centered 3, okay, and buy that way. But there are certain things where if you're buying a game used jersey, it ought to have a photo match by certain companies, or a Mears or a Grobe letter. If it has a BS letter from somebody and it went cheap and you didn't know, because I run into that all the time. People have the wrong letters and then we have to show it again to the authenticators, and now it doesn't get authenticated. And they're like, well, this guy, people have different opinions. Okay. Just like understanding, which is very frustrating for our clients, your clients, my clients, that you can crack out a card and it can come back a different grade 3 times. It's inconsistent. It can be proven over and over again. It doesn't matter what company you use. Okay. You could do it to me. I'd like to think I'm, wouldn't do it as often, or reject a card, then grade a card, then reject it again, then grade it again. I would like to think, but again, I'm sure somebody, if you're grading 1,000 cards, 500 cards a day, whatever it is, you're going to make mistakes, right? And some cards are on the fence, so I can see how it goes one way or the other. But now the grading companies are so overwhelmed, Leighton, and there's not enough qualified people that are grading, and there's no time to train them. It's like me. You couldn't tell me to grade vintage sets here at Heritage, or for me to tell somebody, teach them how to grade in the cuts on Diamond Stars, and then the cuts on T206s, and then the cuts on, well, this is out of vending. Okay. Well, what's vending? I need somebody like yourself that's been doing it for a long time, that grew up in it, like me. It's harder now because there's not kids that grew up collecting, this generation didn't grow up collecting they didn't go back and buy vintage cards. They're just doing the shiny modern stuff. I can teach anybody to grade that stuff. The vintage cards are much harder. And to be honest, the shiny modern cards for detecting trimming is much harder, because it has a smooth, rotary, whatever the cut is, however they do it. But there's a lot to learn. It seems simple. I guess that's the bottom line. It seems very simple, right? There's just go on eBay. It says this has a COA. It says this was graded. There's no, there's really only, I don't want to endorse, obviously PSA, obviously SGC, I think CGC tries to do a good job. I think they're reputable. Beckett's obviously, they were higher up. Now they've fallen. Nobody wants to cross their cards. You have to be careful. I would say when people, this has always been a major issue. People will buy an SGC card or a Beckett card, and it looks better than this certain, PSA, and PSA won't cross it. And I'm like, if you buy SGC, sell it in an SGC. If you buy Beckett, sell it in a Beckett. If you buy PSA, stop trying to blame PSA that they don't cross your card. Or, if you buy SGC, if you bought it in a PSA, you would have paid a fortune for it. The fact you got a discount because it was an SGC, it still went up. You're going to sell it in an SGC. You're still going to make money. Okay. But why can't it be in a PSA? Send it to PSA for a crossover. And the main reason graders don't love crossovers also, I didn't like them at SGC. Why? Because I'm now looking through a holder. And I know you've cracked out cards, because I do it too, where I can look at a card closely, front and back, flip it upside down. And then when you crack it out, you're like,
you go, son of a what?
Yep.
I can't believe it was.
And so what good does it do a grading company to look at a card through the holder on a 52 man on a 7 even? That's a couple $100,000, and they're going to get paid 10. If you crack it out, that you find a little wrinkle that was pressed out that you couldn't see. Now you're either pot committed or you're going to buy the. I mean, it's very difficult for graders to even want to do crossovers to begin with, because you're looking through a holder. Okay, it's a very hard thing to do,
and that means that the vision for them to see the actual card, it's just much blurrier. It's not as clear for them. It makes it much more difficult. And I just want to make sure, because I made a note. I've been. This is, I think, episode number 86. Derek, you might have offered probably the most priceless, impartial advice that I've heard so far. And considering what you do for a living, it's very impressive, because you could have come on here, and I know it's not your style, but you could have come on here and had the heritage tattoo on your face and, the t-shirt. My point is, you are legitimately saying to folks who, even to be fair, even if you're not a beginner, if you're someone who's been in the space for a little bit, I think you should. Derek, I reach out to you. If I have a question about your auction, I don't pretend to be a hero. I text you, hey man, what's up? I don't get you. All right, Lee, what's up, dude? Because information is power. So you're right, Derek. You can easily hit a buy it now on eBay. You can easily hit the bid button in Heritage, or you can easily contact someone like your local dealer and say, hey, what do you have? I just want to buy. But make no mistake, it's a lot more beneficial for your collecting journey it's like doing your homework. Put in the time up front. Yes, it's not as fun to read, to write, to learn how to do long division, all that kind of stuff that my son's dealing with now, but it will pay dividends in the long run. And the dividends are not always just making money in the collection or on your stuff, but actually having fun and having the confidence. I mean, I can speak for photos. I bought one of the most valuable photos that I owned ever a long time ago for like $40, just raw, because I knew exactly what a type 1 photo was. Yeah. And it only happened because of my experience doing something that I loved. And so you're right, Derek. If more people seeked out counsel, and maybe folks don't know that about you, Derek, or your team at Heritage, you don't have to consign to Heritage to ask them a question.
That is
so
correct.
Let's make sure we make that clear.
We're for the hobby. We are for relationships and the hobby. I had a guy reach out to me that's consigned with me before. This just happened last week. And he said, hey, Derek, it's been a long time. I hate to bother you. And I said to so-and-so, I said, why you consider bothering me? Why is this bothering me? You're a client, And he's like, well, what would you do if you consigned a $500,000 card to an auction company and it wasn't Heritage and I was getting the runaround on getting paid? And I said, oh. He said, would you help me with this situation? Would you give me your advice? And I said, I will tell you what Heritage does in this exact situation, and I would tell you what you should expect, and tell me what agreement you sign, and I am never going to not help people. As I said with the 50, I want people to enjoy this hobby. I get it when I hear that a local show is doing well, whether it's an Allentown Mall show, whether it's the White Plains show, whether it's the National. Our friend Joe Drellick and Jimmy Ryan and Brian now run the National. I'm thrilled that it's bursting at the seams, and that instead of worried about getting a crowd in there, they're worried about, man, do we have too many people? Is there not enough parking? Is there not enough restrooms? That's better than it was when the National's always been good, I feel, no matter what. But you remember the Philly show when it wasn't as good. You remember the White Plane, again, shows are better than ever. The hobby's better than ever. I even give respect to the people that lost their ass on modern, and I thought they were going to leave like they did in the 90s. People came in, they lost their ass when they found out it was mass production, and they got out and didn't come back. I feel like we have a lot of people that stayed, took that hit on the LeBron James RPA, took the hit on a chrome refractor Kobe, took the hit on the whatever it was, and they said, you know what? Jordan rookies, what were they in nines at one point? 75 grand. Now they're down to 18 grand, or the 10. Somebody was selling them for over 700 grand in tens. Now they're 200 grand, right? Those people have still stayed in because they love the hobby, because it's a fun hobby, and you can only blame yourself. Like you said, if you do research or pick somebody you trust, even if it isn't me or one of my teammates at Heritage, and we stand behind everything we sell, by the way. So if you ever buy anything from Heritage, you're not going to get the runaround. If something was proven to not be good, we have a reputation. I mean, we're the third largest auction company in the world. You just saw us sell the ruby slippers for 32, 34, whatever the number was crazy. We're catching Sotheby's and Christie's, right? It's not the other way, so it's, but we try and do the best, have the best experts, but we use experts, again, whether it's us or whether it's you or whether it's another company, to try and do it on your own because it seems easy, because it's baseball cards, because it's autographs, because it's jerseys. You will get burned, just like you get into any industry. I'm not somebody that's going to go buy stocks on my own. I like having a broker. I know you can do it yourself, but I like having somebody. No matter what I do, I like to have another expert, and I think the cost is worth it. Okay.
I totally agree with you, Derek. I used to think that, coaching in sports, after high school was like, it's kind of a joke. Like, why do I need someone to teach me how to play golf? And to be clear, my golf game is just horrendous. However,
I won't even golf mine so bad. So
I took up tennis about 8 years ago. And the difference is I decided early on that I liked it enough that I was going to invest. And, now I take lessons, and, my game's come a long way. Pank, I'm coming for you, bud. And so the point is that, paying for that guidance, although at the time you might feel it's expensive, or you're being ripped off, or it's not worth your time. I'm equating to that what you're saying about here, because I have some people like, why would I ask your advice about buying a card of an auction? And I don't say anything. Like, I'm like, oh, well, you should just bid in that auction then.
Yeah, then just bid. Go ahead.
And then, of course, afterwards, they're like, oh, did you win anything in such and such? Memory lane just happened. Mm-hmm. I'm like, yeah, I did. They're like, oh, what'd you win? So I told them. They're like, oh, I asked them what they won because I tried to be nice. They're like, oh, I won this or that. And, they asked me what my honest opinion was. And I said, listen, we're friendly enough. I said, do you want me to give you my real opinion? I looked at the card in 2 seconds. I'm like, I wouldn't have bought that because of this. And I wouldn't have bought that because of that. And they're like, oh. And literally, as we were both saying, he's like, I should have. I'm like, no shit. No, no kidding. You should have reached out. But it's kind of like your point here. You don't have to be bidding in a Heritage auction to seek counsel from Heritage. And I think that's really awesome, Derek, that you and your team are embracing that over there. I can keep you here forever, but I do have a couple more questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
And one of them is something that we've kind of talked about offline before. So I'd love to hear your thoughts as it is present day about grading companies. And my question is this. Do we feel as the hobby to be in a good place? Do we think right now that we have the right amount of grading companies? Do we need more, or do we need less?
I think we need more graders. I'm
great
comfortable with PSA and SGC. That's where I send my cards to. That doesn't mean I don't think CGC does a good job. From what I've seen, they do a good job. I need people that I could hire here. And there's only so many people at each company that I could hire, and some that I couldn't. I think graders need better training. I think we need more graders that are more consistent. I'll never forget when we were doing the invitationals, Leighton, and Joe said that at the time, who now works at Heritage, the hardest thing was consistency because of the overwhelming amount of volume. And I don't know why anybody thinks how can this happen? I don't know. How's the federal government screw up? Because they're overwhelmed.
Of course.
Okay. How about this? You build an immigration system even, and then when there's too many people, it overwhelms the system, and then it's a shit show. Same thing with anything. If we have this. Okay, so here at Heritage, if you told me I had to write 20 sets in a day, but I had to, you're going to get a shittier product out of me because I can't fly through them and meet turnaround time and expectation and get them in the auction. Nobody's putting a quota on me, whether it's consignments or whether it's how much I write or process. Okay. Because of that, I can do I still work constantly, but I can do it the appropriate amount of time. When you tell a grader these have to be out the door, or they have to get through X amount of cards a day, or you get, whatever it is. And then also when you have 80, 90, 100 graders, you're going to get the guys that just don't care whether they make a mistake because they know there's a policy of reviewing. Person just sends it in for review then, or you complain to customer service and you get a free look. I always, I'm not going to grade the most cards in a day, but I'm going to do the best I can to give that customer what they paid for. My honest, and I'm not saying I'm not going to get some wrong, just saying I'm going to do my best job on every card, no matter what it is. Because, you go back in the day, graders would forget to turn over cards because you're grading 287 Barry Bonds out of vending. Okay. So they just took it for granted. I'm not going to turn it on its back. So that's why you'd have cards with back creases. That's why you'd have cards with dumb things because everyone's like, I don't even have to, I can just 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 10, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 10. Listen, I had a grading room with 10 people in it at SGC. I don't know what I'd do if I had a grading room with 90 people or 40 people. SGC is unrecognizable to me now. There's so many graders and so many people, and I give it to Scott and Dave and Doug that they're training these people and they're doing a good job. And, I can't even imagine having 100 and some graders with, the guys at PSA how do you keep everybody grading consistently? So there's going to be inconsistency. You just have to limit the amount, right? Like there's always going to be crime. We just want to limit the amount of crime. There's always going to be inconsistency. And
do you think AI is going to come on at some point and help bring some consistency to it?
I will never say there should just be an AI grading company. You've seen them try, they fail. You need to have somebody that knows that for this issue, this is acceptable. Now, people will say, well, AI can basically take my brain and transfer it into grading, and it's always going to get it right. I still think you can use AI for centering. Obviously, that's science, right? You can use AI to see maybe on certain alterations. I'm sure it can catch erasing, it can catch color added, it can catch so many things. I think you use it as an assistant. So if AI graded, so say I grade 500 cards in a day, AI gave me on vintage cards. Obviously, you can do more modern, but AI literally looked at the card before I did, and it said, this one's an 8, this is a 7, this is a 9, this is a 2. I may agree with 90% of them, but I have the ability
to override.
That's what AI, in my opinion, should be used for. There is a use for it, but it can't just be the end all be all. Okay. It has to be an assist. I would love it as my assistant. I think that would be great. And I think that's how it works. Not just the companies that say, you can't trust PSA, you can't trust SGC, you can't trust the graders at these companies, they're biased, but AI is not biased. Go look.
Meanwhile, computers get hacked, governments are overthrown. You know what I mean? So like nothing's perfect. And to bring it back to kind of center here, something you said a little bit ago earlier in the show, which is, I actually think you don't just seek one advisor, you seek a few, because let's be clear, right? Some people are really experts in pre-war. Yep. It doesn't mean they don't know 50s or 60s, but pre-war is their thing. And then you have other guys who are like, they just love Jordan. And if you had a question about an 86 Fleer or an 84 Star Jordan, of course, you would go to them.
Yes. And there's nothing wrong with that. And, I have guys like one of my best friends is Mike Hefner. He is unbelievable at bats, jerseys, autographs, unopened wax. Okay. But he's on vintage cards, photos. He's great at photos. So when you have, and there's plenty of guys like that. I'm just saying, well, maybe there's not plenty of guys like Hef, but I'm just saying I know I love bouncing things, even if it's been authenticated. There's nothing wrong with bouncing a PSA card or an SGC card or a Beckett card off of you and say, hey, Leighton, this is in this auction. Do you like this for the grade? Or would it grade this today? I think it's important that you still, even if something's authenticated, it doesn't hurt to go the extra mile and say, hey, was this, on a bat? Not all 9s on bats are created equal. Not all 8s, not all 10s, not all 9.5s on bats. But I will say this, and I think you can agree. If you bought a Gaudy Ruth in an 8, I don't care what it looked like, okay, 10 years ago, and you sell it now, you made 6 figures, okay? You may not have set the top VCP record, right?
Sure.
But it still made you a lot of money. So if you just buy the label and you bought right and just bought that grade, you're going to still do fine if the card goes up. But if you want cards that are, and there are people, Leighton, that just do the registries, or the registry is really only one registry, obviously. And all they care about is that number and moving up that decimal point. Totally. And I have talked to people 5 years ago that said, why would anybody care? All that is who has the biggest, what, why would I even care about that? And literally those people that told me, why would I ever care about something like that? It's just ego. They're doing it now because we're competitive. And even if
we're competitive, why do you think I'm taking tennis lessons? I'm not trying to get worse. I'm trying to get better,
Yes, hire the guy if you're getting worse. But no, honestly, I would too. If I put my Clementes on the PSA registry, I'm nowhere near the top. But if I put them up there and I saw that I was 0.07 away from the next guy, I'm going to go out and buy one just to move up. It's
totally agree. But to kind of switch gears for a minute.
Yeah.
Because I haven't asked you this and I'd love to hear your opinion. Let's just name something, whether it be a sector or a type of memorabilia or card, where you feel like, all right, I feel that even though prices have gone insane over the last 5, 10, 12 years, I still feel like, buying photos or buying this or buying game used is a place I really feel very confident about. Okay. Not that this is investment advice, just more of like what your gut is.
Yeah. I mean, by the way, I didn't have the questions before you asked them, right?
I know.
But I will tell you that that's an easy one for me because I've been saying it for years. How in the world can at one point Willie Mays Topps and Bowman cards, Mickey Mantle, were selling for more than their game-worn jerseys, photo matched? That's a true piece of the game, okay? Unbelievable that you can buy an Aaron jersey cheaper than an Aaron rookie in a 9. And not all 9s look nice, okay? But an Aaron jersey that he wore and hit home runs in and was discriminated against.
I agree. Robinson. But why do we think this is? Why is the hobby not accepting of the one asset?
They're getting more
piece of the cardboard
because cards are easier to store. Okay. They're certified and they're small, and you can get $1 million worth of cards in a PSA box. Easy to store.
Sure.
You don't worry. With jerseys, I hear people saying, "Where do you hang them? I put them in a big gun safe, and I hang up the ones that aren't as valuable." You don't. It's more cumbersome. We grew up collecting cards. They're small. Okay. They're encapsulated. They're safe. You can put them in your safe deposit box. I don't know why people do that, but because then you have to go see them. But get a insurance, get a security system, get a big safe, and you can fit so much in there. Memorabilia is a pain in the ass. Bats are elongated. They look super cool on display on bat racks, though, because I have that. Jerseys look great on mannequins, but again, it's big. So I think partly it's the trading card thing. We all grew up collecting trading cards. You are seeing Mays jerseys 10 years ago were under $100,000. Now they're 250, so they are going up. Okay.
Listen, I worked for Hef at Leland's 19, 20 years ago, and what I could have bought if I didn't choose to get paid my salary, and if I just would have bought memorabilia. Oh
when you
my
go back
God.
to those old Leland's catalogs.
That's what I'm saying. Or some of the photos.
Oh, the Type 1 photos are undervalued still. Yeah. Now, some have gone, but you can still find value. So you know much more about Type 1 photos than I do. And I see Type 1 photos and I'm like, I see the prices and I'm like, why didn't I know that? Why couldn't I think of that? But I can't do it in ever. First of all, I'd be homeless because I just spend all my money doing, because there were so many wax. We've known that wax was undervalued. Now there's some that's overvalued, and Type 1 photos are stuff that it's reached its max, but there's still plenty. And what they're finding in non-sports, you see what the non-sports iconic photos sell for. Rock bands, like I don't want Led Zeppelin signed Type 1 photos of Led Zeppelin. Of course I do.
I bought some Allman Brother Type 1 photos from Andy Maddock, and they're some of my most favorite photos in my collection.
Yeah, it's cool because there's still value. There is. And
I don't know if
but
there is or not, but at least I
I
feel
think
like it's
there is.
art, and
It's
I
art.
do
Yeah,
feel a connection to them, and that's really what the
that's
hobby's
cool.
about. So,
Yeah.
Derek, I didn't ask you earlier. I think you've alluded to it. What are you collecting these days for yourself?
See, that's the problem. When I have money, I want to say it burns a hole in my pocket. And whether it's carrying a balance with auction companies and owing interest on it, like I'll justify why the interest is worth paying,
Of
because
course.
I wanted the item. Well, it depends. If the item went cheaper than I wanted to pay, and then you add 10% to it or whatever the interest rate is, or none or whatever, it still works out, right? Payment plan. I can't get enough of game worn jerseys. If the game worn jerseys are going too much or they don't have something I need, I can find a bat. If I can't find a bat, there could be wax that's fallen through the cracks. And it could be hockey wax. It could be basket. It doesn't matter what type of wax. Okay, I really haven't done non-sports wax, but you catch me on the wrong day, I could do that too. Okay, type 1 photos. I will always look if I can pick up a few cool type 1 photos throughout a year. So my problem is there's nothing I don't like.
Love it.
There's nothing like I can literally, if I have money to spend, I don't, and we already know this. This is the one thing I had to discipline myself with, and it's just, it's still a work in progress. That's when when you miss an auction, you're all pissed you didn't buy that, but it goes away because there's another freaking catalog auction the next day from somebody or the next month. There's always another heritage auction, REA auction, golden auction, memory lane. There's always Brian Drent. I don't want to leave too many people, like I don't want anybody, oh, Derek didn't say my auction. Trust me, we know you're out there. Hunt. We know you have a Super Bowl auction, which I'm a football. I love football. So he's got a freaking Super Bowl auction. So I wake up at 5 a.m. and I'm like, oh shit. I forgot Jeremy texted me about, how's with this going. And I'm like, oh, I just saw Hunt Super Bowl auction. Okay, so I go in and place a ton of initial bids in their auction because I love their Super Bowl auction. And I won't be going this year, but I try and it's fun. You can see isn't it fun to bid? It's fun to win, but it's fun to bid too.
It's a ton, and it's funny because I have a ton more questions, but I want to ask this to the audience here. I myself have been finding I love bidding in auctions, but I find it to be cumbersome. So I'm going to ask the audience to let me know in the chat, and I'm going to ask you, Derek, as well. I'm curious, is there a tool? Like I know about Auction Report, so that is a nice way to get a reminder about what the schedule of auctions is. But yet, if I want to just go to one site instead of, and I love Heritage, but instead of looking for Kobe Bryant stuff in Heritage, REA, Leland's, Verkman, etc., I'd like to be able to do it like for the top 30 auction houses in one portal. And I don't know if something like that is out there, but if it is, I'd love to know.
I've never heard of it. You're right. It would work for me with game used too. But again, I don't buy from every auction company. Sure. I always buy from Heritage because they stood behind their product. I always buy from Leland's because they stood behind their product, sure. REA, et cetera, with memorabilia, especially. So I don't know what you're saying makes a lot of sense. I just, I stopped buying on eBay once I was searching it too much. And I don't have unlimited money, so I could spend money on eBay.
And discipline's important. I'm only bringing this up because you're bringing this up. Listen, we have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But make no mistake, that's why I asked the question I did. Derek, I'm finding, and I don't want to get too nuanced or nerdy here, but like we all don't have an unlimited time.
That's true.
And so what I find, for example, is I was getting really frustrated. Let's just say I gave an hour to REA and I would place initial bids.
Yeah.
But then who the hell knows what I was doing? But that's Sunday night because they run 11 million auctions. I forgot. So now it's Monday and I'm like, are you kidding me? That hour and 10 minutes that I just put in is completely gone.
Yeah.
Because I literally won nothing. No one wins anything in our initial bids.
Correct.
And so my point is I would like to have some sort of technology to help me on my journey so that if there's a Kobe Bryant photo, if there's a really cool Wilt Chamberlain item, or if there's a game used bat that I've been looking for from Rocky Colavito, like I don't want to monitor 27 different places at once. And I do feel as a hobby, Derek, that actually everyone will benefit because if the collector gets what they want, ultimately the price will go for a little bit more than it hopefully should have gone for, which means the consignor gets more money in their pocket. And ultimately that consignor, if there's someone in the hobby, is going to put more money back into the system. So that's something that I would love.
Yeah, I think you're right. And because there are plenty of people I just have the disease where I'll collect anything, so I'd have too many searches. But for the people that are specific, whether it's 53 tops, right? Whether it's a Kobe Bryant photo, you can put that in and it searches eBay and every major auction to where you will find it. I think that would be valuable. You have to get everybody to give you your information. I think they would. I mean, yeah, I think that would definitely help. I mean, the other thing too is, do you remember when people used to, look, auctions, you came to view Heritage multiple times where you literally people don't see this. Dealers will spend 2 days viewing, and there's a chance
Totally.
you win not a blessed thing. And all you did was run up the prices.
Let's be clear, we would often get treated by a nice Derek and Lee dinner, on the house from Heritage.
Or how about just me, you, and Stevie? I mean, that's all you need to
I'm
say.
glad you brought it up because I didn't know if we're going to go there. Oh man, we've had some good times.
There is
listen, if you're at a card show or convention, you want to join the good times, come say hi. Derek and I are going to appear at a number of conventions, over the course of the year. And I would tell you, I don't think there's ever a time, Derek, where we've gone out for a beer or a dinner, and then the next morning I'm like, that was terrible. Like, I just had a rotten time. If anything, the next morning I walk into the show with sunglasses on. People can't exactly discover how late out I was.
Yeah, how late I was. And even if we didn't, get intoxicated or whatever, the stories we're going to tell from the Stevie stories, okay, or whatever happened that was funny. We always have had a good time. And I make the argument, who really has a bad time when they go to a trade show? I know, Leighton, that if I saw somebody walk up to your table, you're going to give them the time of day. You're going to talk to them as much as you can, but still maintain your booth and do what you have to do. When I'm at the Heritage booth, I have people come up and just talk to me. I will talk to them just basically about anything, but I'm happy to talk sports. I mean, we're at a sports card show. Okay. We're not digging ditches. Okay. We're not climbing roofs. We're not out in this, plowing snow. We're literally, that's why when dealers complain about a baseball card show or, oh my God, we have to stay here till 3. I'm like, oh no.
Derek, I'm so glad we're on the same page, because really it comes down to, I know your kid's a little bit older than my son, but I really try to teach my son. And to be fair, I try to implore this attitude amongst my staff. And if my friends will listen, is to try to live our lives as the glass is half full, versus, oh my God, I got to go to work today. No, I get to go to work today. I love what I do. Yeah. And I look at it as tennis. I get to play tennis and it's so much fun. I'm choosing my gym class, which is tennis every day.
You know what? You're right. And we've all struggled with it because we're human, and we've all struggled with whether it's depression or sad, and there are people that go through life with the glasses, half full as opposed to half empty. However it came out, I was always a pessimist by nature. So I'm always expecting so I get excited when something good happens, but honestly, I've been very blessed. Okay. And whether you're an optimist or a pessimist, it's we get to work in an industry. People say that to me all the time. You get to work in baseball cards that you collected when you were a kid. You have a dream job. You have the best job. And I was like, well, being the general manager of the Dallas Cowboys or an NFL team or sports team would be my dream job. I said, my phone doesn't stop. Text last night, clients text messages at 10 o'clock at night. Okay. Email. I mean, people, when they have your phone, because we're in a more of a candid business, right? It's baseball cards. It's sports cards. People have no problem wanting to chat with you, talk to you. Once they have your cell phone number, they blow you up, and you have to really have some restrictions, or it can just get out of hand. But I literally try and do the best I can for my clients, or even a new client, because some people work crazy hours during the week, so they only have weekends and they only have evenings. So it's like real estate. So what I thought in my my brain, I needed, what can I compare this to? Because my phone goes off 24/7. My stepdad sells real estate. Realtors, you go when the people, that's weekends. That's in the morning, in the evening, after hours. And I was like, wait a second. And that's not a guaranteed sale. Okay, you still go do it. And there could be just people kicking tires, because I've seen people say that what they enjoy doing, they like to look at houses. Oh, great. You're just going to show and tell? Get nothing, right? So I realized that weekends and evenings are part of this a long time ago. And I've been very blessed because there's been people that had the same opportunity as me and they didn't work the hours, and look where I'm at and look where they're at. If you put the hours in, so I do enjoy it. But it is still work. There's still a lot of work. Okay. Putting together those catalogs just don't happen because, people are just here handing us stuff. There was a ton of effort and work. And that's why we're so proud as a team at Heritage that we set that monumental $63 million auction. But now we have a platinum night coming up that's going to do 20 to 30. And we're like, did we fail? No, we didn't fail. The stars aligned. Because of the relationships and how you treat people, it all came to us at once, right? And we put on what you can argue. I don't even think I'm being biased because that was the best display ever put on at the national convention.
Totally agree.
And keep in mind, the ruby slippers were there too.
Oh, wow. I forgot about that.
So there was over $100 million in one booth. Okay.
And last year, I think Heritage did almost $2 billion in sales.
We almost did. Yeah. The team's amazing. And I give the owners all the credit in the world. How it started is Steve Ivy Rare Coins and Jim Halpern comes on board in the 70s. And here we are as they got into then comics and then got into sports and then got into entertainment, all these different divisions, and they hire experts and do the best to retain experts. And experts cost more money. Okay. And as opposed to just get it in, get it out, get it in, get it out. And just to make money. I mean, they care about the hobby. They care, and we do what we can for the hobby as well. And I think that's why we offer the free appraisals. That's why when people call me and it has nothing to do with, I'm earning your future business, right? I'm not like, there's people that have been loyal REA consignors and then they call me or talk to me. I don't just say, well, you just deal with Dwyer or REA, just stay over there. Be nice to people in our business. It goes a long way. There's no reason to be an asshole. Okay. There's just no reason to be, unless somebody's that way to you. Just be kind. They're asking questions. People ask me all the time, like, I know this is a stupid question. I was like, please let the question be. I mean, the easier it is for me, the better. When they ask me a complicated question, I'm sitting there like racking my brain, driving myself nuts. Give me the easy. Give me what you think is stupid. Great. If I can answer, whether this card here is a 64 Mantle. I love that question because I know that one.
Yeah, exactly. I can usually rattle it off pretty quick.
Yeah. So it's like,
so Derek, if people have questions for you after today's show and they want to talk about the hobby with you, or maybe a future consignment, or maybe what some other cards might be worth, how would they reach out to you? What's the best way? Well,
email is 24/7. I'll answer emails if I wake up in the middle of the night and go pee. I'll answer an email potentially if I'm still up. So Derek G, Derek, spelled like Derek Jeter, Derek, the letter G at ha.com. Okay. Or my work number is 214-409-1975. And that rings to my cell phone. So I'm not going to give out my cell phone just because, but if you become a client, if you become a client, you'll have my cell phone number. Leighton has my cell phone number. I have Leighton, so I know everybody's jealous. I have Leighton's cell phone. I have Stevie's cell phone too.
I know
people are wondering, who is Stevie? Wait, who is this Stevie guy? Trust me.
You got to come out to the card shows to find out.
When you meet him, you'll know.
You'll know. Yeah, you'll definitely know.
Yeah, you'll know.
Well, I'm so grateful and thankful for you appearing today, Derek, and joining me. I'm going to leave you with this thought. This is going to be fun. We'll get this edited. We'll post it. I'll share it with you. We got to show this and play it in front of like the likes of like Lee and a couple others at Philly. And, they're going to razz us or whatever they're going to do.
Oh, of course.
And I cannot wait to see what came out of this episode, Derek. Thank you again. I really appreciate it.
Anytime, Leighton. Love talking to you.
Yep. Take it easy, bud.
All right. Be good.
All right, folks. That was Derek Grady of Heritage Auctions, also formerly head grader of SGC, and has been around the hobby for decades and is one of my great friends in the hobby. I'm so grateful that he joined us today, and I really appreciate each and every one of you for tuning into today's episode of Trading Card Therapy. I'm the doctor signing off. Thanks so much. I'll see you in the next one.